Get things rolling now so that we don't run out of time. So welcome to everyone who has joined us today. I sent out a couple of invites to people that have been connected to this project as the year kind of progressed. It's been a whole community project, I'm going to say, because we've had work from the science department in terms of collaboration. We've had the English department has been helping with some editing and some tweaking and some teaching of some grammatics and some structure, which is incredible. It has just been so much fun from my perspective to watch you guys develop and do the things that you have created here. So as a little background to those people that are tuning in to watch today, the 3204 physics class, rather than writing an exam at the end of the year, took on the global goals for sustainable development, chose at least one, as well as some targets that were associated, and came up with ways to improve something, mostly within our province, actually, which is really cool. So I'm going to give you a little background now on the global goals. It's just a quick 2-minute video so that you know what they're all about. But they basically applied physics to those global goals and made them their own. So it's been a big focus on social justice, as well as physics, and bringing it all together in a business-like structure that they are pitching to you today. So I can't wait to see what they've come up with. I have not seen these projects, and I'm as excited as anyone else to be watching. So here we go, just a quick little overview before our first group gets going.
Got a little soul, the world is cold, cold place to be. Want a little warmth, but who's gonna save a little warmth for me? We know the fire ways, some believers all of the sinners the same. Girl, you and I would die, unbelievers bound to the tracks of the train. If I'm born again, I know that the world will disagree. Want a little grace, but who's gonna say a little grace for me? I know I love you, and you love the sea. But what only water contains a little drop for me.
All right, so welcome to everyone again, and thank you so much for joining us today as the Physics 3204 group shares their solutions to the global goals for sustainable development. We are going to begin today's Dragon's Den with Josh, Mackenzie, Noah, and Jack's presentation on We Need Geothermal. So whenever you're ready, Josh, you take it away, bud. Good.
So we need geothermal. So when you think of the Earth's biggest problems, you think of the fact that climate change is killing our planet, and every year without great action is another year closer to irreversible consequences that we could be living with. Concern number 2 is that people across the world are living without reliable electricity, resulting in a very poor quality of life. This is where the global goals come in. 17 goals for sustainable development are our hope at creating a better future for everyone. Our solution of geothermal energy will address and aid in the progress made in goals number 7 that states renewable energy solutions are becoming cheaper, more reliable, and more efficient every day. Our current reliance on fossil fuels is unsustainable and harmful to the planet. which is why we have to change the way we produce and consume energy. Implementing these new energy solutions as fast as possible is essential to counter climate change, one of the biggest threats to our world. And more specifically, targets number 7.1, universal access to modern energy, number 7.2, increase global percentage of renewable energy, and number 7.A, promote access to research, technology, and investments in clean energy. So what is geothermal energy and how do we use it? Geothermal energy is energy in the form of pressurized water stored beneath the Earth's surface and found mostly around the edges of the Earth's active tectonic plates, volcanoes, or geysers. We turn this potential energy into electricity by tapping into geothermal pools with piping. The extremely heated water then creates steam as the pressure falls. The steam then spins a turbine and turns into kinetic energy, which is run through a generator that moves coils of wire through an electromagnetic field to produce electricity. Benefits of geothermal energy. Geothermal energy is an easily sustainable, reliable source of renewable energy in areas applicable. Some of the many benefits of geothermal energy are: 1. Geothermal energy is an environmentally friendly source of energy due to the fact that the water used to create the geothermal energy is directly reused because it gets sent back to the earth to be reheated and used again. 2. It has massive upside in areas with geothermal potential. Any area with naturally formed underground water reservoirs especially, along the Ring of Fire, are fantastic areas to invest in geothermal energy. 3. Geothermal energy does not require any fossil fuels as the energy is produced using water, natural heat, and pressure from the earth. 4. Despite its high initial investment for construction of a geothermal energy plant, the energy is more cost efficient than most types of power generation since the fuel is free, being hot water. There is no need for transportation of fuel since it is collected at the plant and the resource is constantly being replenished. So the Pacific Ring of Fire. When you're talking about geothermal energy, the main drawback is that you first need to know what land has geothermal potential. Geothermal energy only works well if you are tapping into geothermal pools. As it turns out, the slight movement from tectonic plates causes an ideal situation for these geothermal pools, as water and steam find its way through the cracks in the Earth's crust as a result of tectonic shifts. What countries are in the Ring of Fire? The countries that are impacted by the Ring of Fire stretches across 15 countries, like Indonesia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, Philippines, Japan, USA, Canada, Guatemala, Russia, Peru, and Mexico, Antarctica, and Taiwan. These countries have potential for geothermal energy because of their location and volcanic activity in their surroundings. A lot of these countries listed are developing countries that have prime opportunity for modern renewable source of energy that is more cost efficient in the long term. By investing in geothermal energy production, these countries can be saving money and helping in the fight against climate change. A developing type of geothermal power. There are 3 different types of ways to create geothermal energy. First one is dry steam. This is when the steam is piped directly from the ground wells to the turbine/generator unit. This is done at the geysers in California. Flash steam is when you have defined the water at a temperature greater than 360 degrees Fahrenheit and it flows up the well in the ground under its own pressure. As it flows upwards, the pressure decreases and some of the hot water boils in the steam. The steam is then separated from the water and used to power a turbine/generator. What does not get turned into steam goes back into the reservoir. Lastly is binary steam. This is when you get water at a lower temperature at around 225 to 360 degrees Fahrenheit. They use the heat from the hot water to boil a working fluid, and the working fluid is vaporized in a heat exchanger and used to turn a turbine. The water is then put back into the ground to be reheated. How much geothermal energy costs? The initial cost for a field and power plant is around $2,500 per installed kilowatt. In the United States, this would be 3,000 to 5,000 kilowatt for a small power plant. Operating and maintenance costs would be between 1 cent and 3 cents per kilowatt hour. Geothermal power plants can be running more than 90% of the time, but can be running for 98% of the time, but require more maintenance costs at the rate of this production. So physics of geothermal energy. Geothermal energy can be explained by the first three laws of thermodynamics. The first is the zeroth law of thermodynamics. The zeroth law states that if one object is in thermal equilibrium with the second object, and the second object is in thermal equilibrium with the third object, then the first and third are also in thermal equilibrium. In a binary cycle geothermal plant, there is hot water being pumped through its own system in a loop. There is also a secondary liquid with a lower boiling point being pumped through the turbine that is connected through a heat converter to the hot water. The hot water wants to stay in thermal equilibrium with the heat converter. In order for this to happen, the secondary liquid also has to stay in thermal equilibrium, causing steam that powers the turbine. So if the heat of A equals B and B equals C, then A also equals C. First law of thermodynamics states that the change in internal energy is equal to the difference of the heat transfer into the system and the work done by the system. So delta U equals Q minus W, where Q is the heat added to the system and W is work done by the system. This is used in geothermal because when heat is added to the system, the internal energy of the system gets larger, so there has to be work done to offset this. This is why the turbine spins, to create kinetic energy to match the heat added for the internal energy. In conclusion, I cannot stress enough the massive potential geothermal energy alongside with the worldwide benefits of using more and more clean renewable energy sources. Specifically, countries along the Ring of Fire should invest more towards the installation and research of geothermal energy because it will pay out based on their geothermal potential of their location. And that's it with the slideshow. I have the prototype there, but it takes a while for the water to boil. I don't know what I should do about that.
We can absolutely come back to you at the end to have a look at your prototype. How does that sound, Josh?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your research. So for those people that are in the audience today, each group actually wrote a full paper, and this is now a summary of their paper as a presentation format. They've also built some prototypes, which some groups will be sharing with us today. Does anyone in the audience have any questions for Josh or his group at this point in time? Go ahead, Georgina.
Hi, Josh. I've been watching you participate in some of Miss Jane's classes, so I feel like I've been to class with you a couple times already now, watching your videos and stuff. But Josh, I'm really interested in this. I've only seen probably, one company truck that goes around where I live with geothermal, a company advertising geothermal. In your research, did you see any examples of us, pushing into this energy source here in the province?
So there's not a whole lot of potential for these big geothermal power plants that we don't have enough active tectonic plates or anything around Newfoundland for a big power plant, but we can also use it for home heating, and that takes a lot less space and everything to do it. So I think that geothermal is coming in a pretty big way for heating and cooling in the province, but not in the same power, like the power plants actually.
Right. Thanks. I just, it's really interesting. I really appreciated that the background information for me was newer, but I think as we focus more on the sustainable goals, it'll be more attractive for people to consider it as an energy source. Thanks, Josh.
No problem. Thank you.
And I think I saw one more question from Nikki, maybe. We can't hear you, Nikki.
Of course, I'm on mute. I just wanted to add to Georgina's question because share with you, a friend of mine just bought a house and kind of tore it back down and renovated it. And they actually put in a geothermal heating system, Josh. And the upfront costs for putting that in is probably beyond something that I would be able to afford to put into my house. And I wonder if that's because of the supply and demand. I wonder about you and your work and your learning, if there is some way to support kind of what Georgina was saying, we see very little about it. So as home buyers, and I know you guys aren't there yet, but your parents are, your relatives are, the community, there's a group of people in the community who are. Is there a way to educate others about thinking differently about the heating that they use in their homes and helping them understand what the options are? And while that upfront cost is heavy, the long term is much, much cheaper and better for our world, for our climate, and fighting that beast of climate change. So I just wanted to share those, and thank you.
Yeah, I definitely think that the government should have some big projects sort of get the name out for geothermal, and I think that the demand would be higher, so that we'd get a lot better prices on it too, so it would work out better for everyone.
Thank you very much, Josh. We'll come back to you to see your prototype at the very end. Really appreciate that.
All right, so we're going to explain why we should implement wave energy in Newfoundland. I think I'm on mute. Yeah, I'm good. All right. All right. So this, me, Lucas, and Cameron have made this project. And here's our overview. So in this pitch, we are trying to prove how wave energy is energy efficient and safe for the environment. Now, we can say with 100% certainty that our province has had a few struggles here and there with energy for the past few years. Our options have looked a little steep, and however, we believe wave energy can power the future and can help the province become more environmentally friendly.
Our main focus for this pitch is to prove how we can help to solve some global goals. The two goals we wish to achieve include expanding and upgrading energy services for developing countries, as well as promoting access to research, technology, and investments in clean energy.
Now, we wish to present a problem and the solution to that problem that makes the government go, hey, this ain't a bad idea.
Okay, so it's important to note as well that we don't wish to replace any big energy plants such as Muskrat Falls. Our plan is to demonstrate how wave energy can be an efficient way to produce energy in Newfoundland and prove its potential. All of this is explained in order to put focus back on the main problem, which is creating a solution to our massive global goal. Okay, so very few tests as well have been done on this project. And knowing that, we're really looking for an investment from the province to prove that this is a viable energy source. It has been proven in other countries to work very well. However, it hasn't been really used that much in Canada. So keeping that in mind, it's really important that we do some more experimental research as well first.
And going with that, we kind of want to make sure that the method can be just as effective and safer for the environment, because it's very important that the environment just, lives through this hurdle that we're going through. We'll show this by first explaining how wave energy is created and sharing our model that we created, and finally giving a rough cost estimate, and then go from there. So now we move on to how it works. In order to produce energy through waves, we have researched different methods that would have been used around the world. We found that the most effective method utilized is what is called an oscillating wave column.
All right, so an oscillating wave column is a shoreline wave energy device, and these devices are typically located next to cliffs with deep oceans. This device includes a chamber, which is built facing down into the water, and due to the change in wave movement, this chamber acts like a giant piston. The air is compressed and decompressed by the movement of the waves. The air is channeled through the chamber, causing a turbine to spin.
A specific turbine is used, which is known as a Wells turbine. This turbine is similar to most turbines as it does store excess power. However, it is unique because regardless of the direction of wind, it continues to spin in the same direction.
All right.
And now for a demonstration of our model.
Okay. Next slide. Perfect. Okay, so in this, basically, all it shows is that when the waves move up, the air pressure is going to increase, and that's going to move the Wells turbine in obviously a left wing motion. And when it goes down, it's also going to move the same way as well. So what I did is I made a simple, very simple model out of a fidget spinner and some paper and as well some cardboard. So basically we grab an air can, and essentially what happens when you increase it. What? Hold on. This was working like 5 minutes ago.
No worries, Lucas. If it doesn't work, you can also just talk to what it was doing.
Okay, so what it was doing was when I attached it to the thing and sprayed it with air, it would move in one singular direction no matter what air pressure was used. So instead of it going back and forward, and that would obviously decrease the airflow potential and decrease the energy being produced. However, obviously right now it's not working. It was working like 10 minutes ago, but it does prove to be very efficient. Obviously, a couple examples of this would be Michikoku in Japan, and also the Limpet design in the island of Islay. These models really produced a lot of energy for both of those places, and they were able to supply a lot of homes with that. So that is really our main goal when it comes to this project, is to produce as much energy possible for residential areas and promote, obviously, the use of a new type of energy.
All right, now we move on to our location. As we said, we don't wish to power all of Canada or even all of Newfoundland with this idea. We wish to further develop wave energy and put it to use. Because by doing so, we hope that in the future, wave energy is able to replace any harmful sources of energy production, like coal plants or nuclear plants, even if it is just a minimum amount.
So in order to do this, we need a shoreline that's both accessible and has very consistent waves. So what we had to do is we had to look at various different locations across Newfoundland. And this spot right here was quite great because it's quite close to a existing grid. So it wouldn't cost as much money to hook it up to the grid. And also it's easily accessible. And also there's limited, there's a decreased potential of, say, damage to the oscillating wave column from falling rocks or deterioration and things like that, where it is in a cove. So this location right here that we chose is around the Bellevue area. So it's around, I'd say, 5 minutes from the nearest energy grid. And that means that we'll be able to hook it up significantly easier at a very cheaper price.
All right, yeah, so as we were saying, this is clearly our 4K picture of our location. And it is next to Bellevue. And like Lucas said, it's not hard to get to, but it's also not that easy. There would need to be some clearing. And yeah, so road clearing or transferring the energy will have minimal costs. And here is just zoomed out pictures of our location. So that's the picture on the left is showing all of Newfoundland, and our device is located. Our location would be located eastern Newfoundland, and the right picture is more zoomed in, showing how it's just to the west of Dildo. That's where Bellevue is. And here is the final zoomed in picture. And so our coast that we have chosen is around 5.5 kilometers from the nearest road. So it's not right close to the road. So there would be a lot of clearing needed to be done, but it is still a great choice because it is out of the way and there wouldn't be any harm to anything. And right here, this last picture is showing how far our coast is from the nearest transmission grid, which is just below Long Cove, which it's 18.5 kilometers roughly.
And now we move on to our cost analysis. First, we should take a look into the cost of clearing a road out to our location. If all goes according to plan, clearing a road to our desired destination would cost around $40 million. It's a little bit much, but if we wish to pave this road, it would cost an additional $11 million. However, usually with these kinds of roads and stuff, we're just kind of trying to get the basic idea out here right now. The roads are a very big addition. However, it definitely does help to have roads leading to the power lines. This being it is being a standard size 2-lane road, though.
Okay, so I'm going to add on to what Cameron said there. It doesn't only include land costs as well. We also need to consider how much energy that we have to transfer and how far we have to transfer it. And the way we did this is we estimated this using Muskrat Falls data. Cameron, if you want to explain more on that.
Yep, sure can. This is probably definitely be the roughest estimate, if not in this project, but in the entire world. We looked at how much it costs for Muskrat Falls to line out 1,100 kilometer high voltage direct current transmission line from central Labrador to Newfoundland's Avalon Peninsula. And we could say it's around 370 million, which is a nice bit larger than what our price is for that kind of power.
Right, and knowing that we would only need about 50 kilometers of this line, around 17 million would be plenty to hook this up to the energy grid.
Like we said, this is probably the biggest estimate one can make. We can make use of transmission lines which are already in use to distribute the generated power throughout the island.
All right, so on average, one oscillating wave column costs about $1.5 million. And it also creates a yearly output of 131 megawatts. So having a lot of these would in turn mean have a lot of power. So it produces a good amount of energy. However, in comparison to other power grids, wave power is a little more pricey than most.
Okay, so to put it to scale on how much energy this actually produces, if you want to switch to the next slide there, I'm not sure if it is. All right, so to put this to scale on how much energy this would produce, I'll compare it to the Grand Canoulee Dam constructed in Washington. This dam has a yearly average output of around 2,300 megawatts.
All right, so if you're wondering if that's a lot, well, this is enough power to continuously supply the needs of 2 cities the size of Seattle. Now, Seattle has an area of 217 kilometers squared, but it has a population of roughly 700,000 people.
Yeah. And you know, a good starting point would be to create 10 of these oscillating wave columns. These devices combined, only 10 of them, would produce around 1,310 megawatts yearly.
Okay, so to put this in context, a typical Canadian family home uses a rough amount of 7 megawatts per year. So under ideal circumstances, a 1 megawatt plant could power 1,200 homes, meaning that a 1,310 megawatt power will power every single home in Newfoundland. This does not include, obviously, anything besides residences.
All right, so also to note on an annual repair cost from other previous devices created, it would be approximately $700,000 a year. And not to mention how many things could go wrong and any other things we missed when looking for pricing.
Matt, I think you cut out.
He did. Can we get this one wrapped up there, guys? We need to get one more group done.
Okay, so I'll continue where Matthew. I'll continue where Matthew left off. So now that we have all the information explained, I'll do an estimated final cost. So that's going to be around $83,700,000 for the oscillating wave column, transmission lines, land clearing, along with paved roads. The transportation and cost for equipment is rather difficult to pinpoint, therefore being left out of the specific pricing. And Cameron, if you want to go on to the physics part of it now, we can do that.
Yeah, sounds good. So for this project, using physics concepts seem rather troublesome at first. Yeah, we use basic math skills and whatnot, but calculating energy outputs requires our own experimental data.
Okay. If you want to go to the next slide, the last one. Okay. So 3 things are explained in this formula. And that is obviously the wave surface dynamics of the oscillating wave column, the torque and angular speed of the Wells turbine, and as well the changes in pressure for the oscillating wave column. This equation is derived from all those things. And this can calculate our dynamic airflow performance of the oscillating wave column. And that is it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And in the interest of time, we're just going to skip over questions until the end. And we're going to go over to hear from Kira, Abby, and Sydney about friction zones. And again, I will remind everyone to please try to stick to their 5 to 8 minutes. Thank you. Ready whenever you are. Go ahead.
Hey, hi. My name is Sydney Doyle, and we're here with me, Kira, and Abby. And we're working on friction zones, which Abby's going to tell you about now.
Hello. So, can you guys hear me? I don't know. Okay. So just like everybody else has already given a presentation, we've been tasked with creating a solution to a specific target with the global goals for sustainable development. This could either be done globally, locally, and had to be done using physics concepts and ideas to develop the solution. For our project, we decided to do goal 7, which is affordable and clean energy. Within this goal, we chose to do target 7.2, which is to then increase the global percentage of renewable energy. So if you want to go to the next slide there, Sydney. So what are friction zones? So after doing a lot of research and exploring our options, we came across different websites that talk about creating electricity from thermal energy. This idea and concept had sparked our interest, and this is how we came up with our project, really. We decided to take a look at cars, or well, specifically their tires. And as we know, tires create friction as they're driving. So essentially, we came up with friction zones. A friction zone, as you can see on the diagram there, is going to be a 14-meter stretch of road that is designed to collect the thermal energy generated from the friction of the car tires as they're driving. For research and calculation purposes, we use a speed of 50 kilometers per hour. So as the car is driving over the stretch at that speed, the thermal energy is then going to be converted into usable electricity using thermoelectric generators. This electricity is then going to be stored inside a lithium battery, which you can see poorly sketched out on the top there. That usable energy can then be used to power external outputs, and in our case, we would almost be hoping to use it for nearby streetlights. So I don't know, you might want to stop sharing your screen for a second, Sydney. I had a prototype made up, and we had an incident this morning where we kind of lost it a little bit. She kind of fell apart. So I am missing some of the pieces, but for a rough go per se, this was a prototype that we had done. So it's kind of hard to see there. So this green plate here was to represent the road, and then this part coming down is currently only actually representing half of the thermoelectric generator. Like I said, we ended up losing some of the pieces for it. So these two pieces here were representing the semiconductors. So as this car is to be driving across there, the tires are creating friction, and it is being absorbed into the gray plate up here, going through these semiconductors. So this is absorbing the heat, and this is what cools it down. This wire was also connected through the bottom, so it would have been connected on both sides through here, and that is how the electricity would have been running. And so then from there, we have it running into this lithium battery that was just going to be off the side to the road there. So I think it is Kira next.
All right, so as Abby was saying, the friction zones would consist of thermoelectric generators placed under the asphalt to collect the thermal energy that's generated by the friction of tires on the pavement. So the energy will then be stored into a lithium-ion battery. So the thermoelectric generator is a generator that runs by detecting and absorbing a change in temperature, and that then produces electrical power. This generator consists of the metal plate, as Abby showed, also known as the interconnect. This is where the heat is applied. It then sits on top of two semiconductors, an N-type and a P-type. The electrons move down through the P-type semiconductor and up through the N-type. From there, the semiconductors are on another metal plate, which is where it's released into the wires or the loads. So this is where it would go into the lithium battery. In our case, the generator would be placed under the road to absorb the heat produced by the friction of tires. From there, the wire will connect, run electricity created into a lithium battery. So the electricity can then be used for different external outputs. The lithium-ion battery uses a positive electrode or cathode and a negative electrode or anode, and an electrolyte as a conductor. The cathode is is made of metal oxide, and the anode is porous carbon. As the discharge occurs, the ions flow from anode to the cathode through the electrolyte and the separator. Then the charge reverses in direction, and the ions flow from the cathode back to the anode. More simply said, as one side loses electrons, the other gains electrons, and this just goes back and forth as it charges and discharges. We thought the lithium battery would be a good choice because lithium is the lightest metal, has the greatest electrochemical potential, and can provide the largest energy per weight. Lithium batteries initially used lithium metal, which was then later proven to be dangerous and explosive, but it was then replaced with lithium ions in 1991. The battery is known today as the fastest growing battery on the market because it's both safe and the voltage and current limits are respected. The battery also requires low maintenance as it has no memory and does not require exercising to keep in good condition. However, they do require protection, a protection circuit to prevent thermal runaway if it's stressed too much. They also degrade at a high temperature when stored at a high voltage, and no fast change would be possible at freezing temperatures.
Okay, so now to talk about the cost and efficiency. We were able to find the approximate cost and efficiency of both a thermoelectric generator and the lithium-ion battery. The thermoelectric generator's cost depends on the temperature difference, and we found that the costs of the generators range from $13,500 per kilowatt to $16,000 per kilowatt at 500 degrees, and from $10,000 per kilowatt to $12,000 per kilowatt at 575 degrees. Studies show that the power price of thermoelectric generators is about 80 cents per kilowatt hour with efficiency of 13.3%, and that's assuming that the ZT value is approximately 0.8. We also found that the volume-weighted average price of a typical lithium-ion battery is roughly $137. And the lithium-ion battery is highly efficient, for it has 99% charge efficiency, and it has a small discharge loss, whereas other options, such as an ice battery, have a percent efficiency that ranges from 20 to 60%. Both the thermal electric generator and the lithium-ion battery are low maintenance. So this means that it wouldn't cost a whole lot to keep the friction zones going once they're there. And this could mean that the electricity generated wouldn't be as expensive for those who would use it. That brings us to the question of how this meets the goal that we chose. Friction zones can be a new way of increasing the percentage of renewable energy. And if placed in multiple high traffic areas, the 14-meter stretch of road can collect up to 96.5 joules of thermal energy per vehicle, which can be converted to 26.8 kilowatt hours using thermoelectric generators and stored in lithium-ion batteries. As we've said before, the power generated can be used for any other external uses, such as powering streetlights in the area, or it can be used for electricity in nearby buildings or homes. Friction zones can be placed in any high traffic areas, such as Kenmount Road in St. John's, for example. People are always going to be driving cars, so this could be a new source of renewable energy. As cars drive on the roads, they're constantly producing thermal energy, and adding friction zones can be the way to collect it. We truly believe that these zones could become a reality, and it may not be the most efficient way to store electricity. However, the cars are going to drive and create friction anyways, and therefore we feel it is completely reasonable to get electricity from it, because why not? If friction zones are implemented on busy roadways and are successful, then it can increase the percentage of renewable energy. So this took a lot of time, research, and energy to put together, and we want to say thank you for taking some time out of your very busy lives to listen to our thoughts and ideas.
Thank you so much. That solution is super creative, and I can't wait to hear more about it. But we still have one last group, and we have just enough time to hear from them. I do understand that some of you have class to go on to at noon, so don't worry if you have to log off. Thank you for your attention. But we do have Josh and Aaron, and I would love to hear at least a little bit about their project for the remainder of this class.
All right, so what we did is multi-housing complexes of the future. Next slide. So as of May 2nd, we came across a video on social media of the project that perfectly showed what we are aiming for so far in our project. Thankfully, however, this is a good thing. This video demonstrates how they build a house with giant wooden Lego bricks that are already pre-insulated and are easily put into place within a day or two. The whole house's framework has prepped and ready for insulating electrical plumbing at an insane pace in comparison to modern day methods of house construction. This project heavily focuses on cheap, compact housing that can be implemented in as many regions of the world as possible. Because of the goal, population per square kilometer will likely increase as the housing itself is meant to possibly up to families as 8 or 10 people per family. There are several places in the world that have extremely high population density. An amazing example of this is Dubai's population increase from 1980 to 2019. In the span of 40 years, they went from 70.85 persons per square kilometer to a whooping 860.49 people per square kilometer. What we plan on changing and improving. We plan on attacking several problems with housing that could be improved on. Some of these things include insulation, soundproofing, cleaner energy, and a self-sustaining home. Space efficiency, less unused space in houses, but as roomy as possible. All right, next slide, guys. Of course, because of the pandemic, there are several things that need to be considered in multi-housing complexes. So for these type of houses, we plan on making cohorts that can play a factor in this, and we can maintain the idea without worsening current conditions in play with the pandemic. This housing type is meant to be as flexible as possible. We plan on developing region-specific modifications for conditions in which the housing idea isn't as effective. One way in which we plan on tackling this is through different types of clean power generation in hot, sunny climates. Thermal solar energy will be the main focus, but in windy or snowy climates, wind and hydro energy may be implemented. The design for the housing complex is made to be as flexible as possible in both size and functionality. Due to the issue of cost, building something too big would be ideal. Here are a few designs, an example of a small, medium, large concept. Things that can be altered to better suit the needs of residents. The usual one-size-fits-all that comes with most products like school chairs and desks is something to avoid, because the point of the house is to cut down on space and to move several families into one home. The house would have to suit everyone's living interests. So in the same style as build your own computer website, make an online website to construct your own house would make things easier. After plans are discussed, workers can start assembling of the homes in a location that doesn't require the needs of local town sewers or city water. So this way, the homes can be eco-friendly with alternative ways of constructing these basic utilities. There will be a lower price to pay for the construction hours of the homes because they will be easier to construct. Additionally, if this idea becomes more popular and contractors start building these homes, building supplies make it cheaper, and real estate modular homes will grow even more. Next slide. The prices of these materials will roughly be the same as they are now. However, people will save money because the materials will be upgraded or newer to be more cost effective. The average cost to wire a 1,000-foot square house is $1,600 to $3,800, or about $2 to $4 per square foot. Plumbing prices typically range from $100 to $600 per fixture. Siding costs between $3 and $11 per square foot, with most homeowners spending $3 to $8 for professional installation. These are just a few examples of average prices. The price of lumber is now at an all-time high, and people just aren't buying it until the price drops again. Other materials such as plumbing and electrical will stay relatively the same for these houses. Eco-friendly materials used. As far as the bases go, there will be normal siding used and electrical, but in regards to generating electricity, we can use solar panels and wind turbines, but in smaller scale. But also for things outside, we can have planter boxes included into the houses so people can grow their own vegetables and fruit. Also, the grass will be grew using hydro seed made up of recycled newspapers and trash, which prevents runoff of water and flooding. For insulation purposes, we try to come up with an alternative rather than your basic insulation or styrofoam in walls and undersiding. So we discovered aerogel, which is a very light substance that stops heat transfer. It is made up of nanostructured silicon dioxide made through a sol-gel chemical processing and drying technology. It is constructed by approximately 96% of air and 4% open-pored structure of silica, which could be hydrophobic for some applications. The material is highly porous and has excellent insulation purposes. Aerogel is also very strong and is being used day to day in strengthening concrete pillars and bridges and energy saving and to make them stronger. Insulation in a building or house plays a big role in energy saving. Also interested in finding new ways to insulate homes, which we think we have found a solution to. Aerogel is very light and very promising for use in high energy efficient buildings and windows. Tests conducted on different density of aerogel showed that with the different density of each one, it has different thermal properties.
Thank you very much.
Aerogel is also very good at keeping sound from escaping through walls, and this will be a bonus in the modular homes to keep privacy between the families. All right, next slide. Because of the obvious limitations that climate has on specific housing types, implementing different ways to generate power that are both eco-friendly and aligned to specific types of climate can really help the issue. Regardless of where you are living geographically, there's always a way to generate power. Although if you live in an Antarctic desert, that might not be easy to argue. Most places globally have lots of sun or wind, especially if you live near the equator or high above sea level. This accounts for several dozen countries such as Middle to North Africa, vast majority of Europe, and Middle to East Asia. This is how we would kickstart the concept. Find people who would be willing to test out this housing for a specific period of time, possibly for free, or even offer larger groups of homeless people several year free stay in exchange for data revolving around the house. Leaks, lack of power, issues with walls, heat, and sound, how solar thermal power has affected powered appliances, etc. Subdivision, including only the housing complexes, this would step to take after the first one. A larger scale after the housing idea is fully ready to be implemented everywhere, one that can actually last a generation or even a few. Lastly, depending on the success and traction the idea gains, the implementation of housing with aerogel installations, customizable sizes, and several new power opportunities could become widespread and be taken out of the province. Is that it? Why hasn't it been done before? One of the main changes we made in our design to modern housing is use of aerogels. Aerogels are currently being mass produced, so using them in high quantities now would be both costly and difficult. Because of that, with the hope of an idea being a success, aerogel productions might cease to be so uncommon if the demand for them were to raise in the chance this project came to light and became a bigger deal. We would have to pitch the idea to any industry that would be involved with the production of materials, the labor needed to build the housing complexes, time taken to build land, and jumpstart the implementation of these houses globally. And I think that's it, Josh. Okay. Okay, and I think that's it.
Unreal. Guys, thank you so much. I have learned so much just by listening to this today. I'm super thrilled with the work that you've put in. I know that I haven't been there to, see what's developing over the last couple days. So kudos to you for continuing and making all this happen. I am so proud of you. I know that Josh had to run off to his next class, so we didn't get a chance to see his prototype, Josh Elford. But I did shoot him an email and ask if maybe he could take a little video. If not, I want to thank you all so much for joining us today. This has been a real pleasure. Yes, Lucas, if you could take a video of yours too, that would be amazing. It looked really great in the screen. We just didn't quite get to see it operating. That's not a problem at all. And like Nikki said, this is science, and that is very real. Bravo to all of you, and I'll be checking in with you tomorrow, 3204s. I'll have a post in Google Classroom for you. Good work. See you later.
Okay, so this is my prototype for my project on geothermal energy. And I think that this really shows that geothermal is a lot simpler than a lot of people think. Right here I'm using a pot with water in it to act as the water under the Earth's crust. And I'm using a hot plate to heat up the water. When that water gets heated up, it makes steam that goes through the cup on top and funnels it all into the turbine that I have, and it makes kinetic energy from there. Now, if I was really advanced, I'd be able to set up some sort of generator connected to a turbine, but I think that kind of takes away the simplicity of this prototype and just showing how easy it is to understand geothermal, and it's not that hard. Now, the problem that I was having here is that I had my hole in my can too large, so all the steam wasn't coming out fast enough on top, and it was just going out all over the place because it wasn't sealed right. So I actually struggled to get the turbine moving in this one. One of the biggest things that I found out about geothermal through this prototype was that the piping really matters. If you have the pipe too far away and then it's cooling off and it's losing energy, you want the piping to be as short and as pressurized as you can to keep all the energy in the system.